Okay, hey everyone, welcome back to Quality Matters. I'm your hostess, Darcy Chambers. I'm here with my co-host.
Jumped in a little soon there.
Go ahead.
I'm Kyle.
We always have an awkward moment introducing ourselves. We need to work on that. We have a special guest here with us today, Matt Sands, and he is the host of the Mineral Rights Podcast. You want to tell us a little more about yourself?
Hi, yeah. Thank you, Darcy and Kyle, for having me on. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Like I mentioned in our emails, I'm a bit of a quality geek. Little known fact about me and my work history, but that's a lot of what I did, at least in the last 5 years that I was working in the corporate world. So,
in today's global economy, quality matters. Benjamin Franklin once quipped, "The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten." Quality Matters is here to talk about all things quality. So whether you're looking to improve your business, getting ready for an audit, or dealing with failed inspections, tune in, check us out, then get back to doing work that matters.
So yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I've got about 20 years experience across all areas of the oil and gas industry, from upstream to downstream. And my focus over the last 5 years has actually been on investing and consulting in the minerals and royalties space, and started the podcast about 2 years ago, just because I saw there really was a lack of credible information out there to help mineral owners manage their assets. And so just wanted to provide a source of quality information, since that's the theme of the show, for those folks. And fortunate enough that I had one of my listeners, Justin Williams, who's an individual mineral owner. His family has minerals in West Texas, and he reached out, and I was kind of sporadically releasing episodes at the time, and was just kind of had other work. And so it was, a lot of stuff goes into producing a podcast, as you guys know.
Yep.
And so he came out and said, "Hey, I'd love to help. All I'm asking for is just to learn, because I want to learn more about these minerals that we inherited." So I said, "I'd love to help. Come on the show. Let's work together." So he provides what I call the individual mineral owner perspective. I kind of have the industry and investor point of view. So yeah, together we've been making the podcast for the last couple of years, and it seems to be going well.
No, that's cool. Now, I'll tell you, this was something that surprised me here a few years ago when I first learned it. You talk about mineral rights. If you own the property, you don't necessarily own much of what's beneath it. Can you give like a quick explanation for folks that may not be familiar with this?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a good point, because what you're referring to is what we call when the minerals have been severed from the surface. And so, if you buy a house today, certainly in like an urban environment, you're more than likely not going to get the mineral rights below your house. And so that's been severed at some point in the past, and someone else owns that, and you own the surface rights and the pertinences and all the stuff above ground, the garage, the house, the shed, and whatever. But so yeah, it's a common occurrence where people will own the actual surface, whether it's an actual lot in a city, or even in a rural environment. And sometimes they may not own the minerals below the land if it's been severed, because what can happen is when you sell the property, you can retain the minerals. So if you, this is probably a tip that I'll throw out there for folks, that if you do find that you own the minerals below your property, and you bought the house and you find out later that it came with minerals, just keep those. Even if you sell the house, when you do everything in the real estate filings, disclose that you're going to keep the minerals and all that, but then you can, in the actual deed, reserve the minerals to yourself, and then just pass on the surface, and so that you have the ability to enjoy that in perpetuity. So it's a type of real property, just like owning a house. So that is a cool thing about mineral rights. It's in perpetuity. So if you pass it down to an heir, they could have it forever, and they could pass it on to their heirs and so forth. So,
no, that's good information.
Yeah.
Again, that was something that confused the meth out of me a few years ago, because it just seems logical. If you own the property, you got everything as far down as you want to go.
Yeah, you'd think, that's what you would hope, but when somebody comes on your land, and actually the interesting thing about minerals is that it's the dominant estate. So another little known fact is that actually if somebody leases the minerals below your house, they have the right to, the oil company that leased that property has the right to come in and drill a well under your property and doesn't need to get your permission. And that's assuming, obviously they're not going to put a well pad on your in your backyard or on your land. But if they're, now with directional drilling, horizontal drilling,
Yep.
They could be a mile or two away drilling the well, and that well bore could go right under your property, and that you don't need to be notified of that. That's another reason to have the mineral rights, so that you can access the royalties from any oil and gas production under your property.
So I find this all very fascinating. However, I think we have a different topic for today's episode. And maybe at another time we can have that discussion. So I think
Sure.
we were going to talk about the importance of quality and continuous improvement, considering the prices right now.
Yes. Yeah, no, that is a huge deal. If you think back to where we've gone in the industry over the past few years, but back in the 10 years ago, we were in a period where we hit, $100 plus per barrel for oil. And what that enabled companies to do is become kind of, fat and happy. They didn't have to become super efficient. They could just, there was waste in the system. Didn't matter because they were making money hand over fist because the price of oil was so high. Well, you fast forward to around 2015, the most recent downturn, and besides the one we're going through right now, and we saw the need that really to streamline things and to become more efficient and effective in the way we ran the business, just because you had to do that in a lower commodity price environment. Otherwise, you weren't making money. You were going to go out of business. So I think it's a real hot topic right now with the price of oil, in the $30 range. And so it is an important thing. I think that the industry needs to be thinking about, because these lower prices could be here for a while, if not for the duration. So
let me ask this question. The price of oil, everybody likes to throw that around. For those that don't know, what's a good price of oil? What's a bad price of oil? And where are we sitting right now?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask. I read an article yesterday, and the article referred to a Deloitte study that said that 35%, I believe, was the number of either 30 or 35% of oil and gas companies right now are insolvent at $35 a barrel of oil. So it certainly isn't $35 a barrel where it needs to be for these companies to make money, at least with the current way of working. It's possible that some of those companies could be profitable at $35 a barrel. Again, if they got that efficiency and effectiveness down and were really, running on all cylinders. So yeah, I think it depends on who you ask. I think a lot of the break-even prices that if you look at investor presentations for publicly traded oil and gas companies, we're talking in most of the shale basins in the $45, $50 a barrel range in order for them to break even.
So you talk about these efficiencies. What are some of the key wastes that you're seeing when you talk about they can make it more efficient? They're wasting money here and there. Mm-hmm. What are some key things, and is this occurring at the level of the super majors? Are we talking about the supply chain, the field crews? What are we talking about?
Well, I think it is all across the board. I don't think it's just something where you see these sort of wastes at the big super majors where they've got massive overhead, so to speak. Lots of staff and employees. And, could be within a smaller independent. I know a few specific examples here in Colorado from talking to friends and and family, hearing the ways that they're working, and I've can hear some of the waste that's in the system, and it kind of boils down to, I think, working on the wrong things. So I listened to you guys' last episode, or one of the last episodes, that it was really good, about the Toyota production system and Deming and how he kind of helped get that started.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a link that another kind of got down the rabbit hole of the Deming Institute website and was reading some articles. And there's a really good blog post that I came across preparing for this, just to refresh my memory on some of the terms. But the blog post was titled "To Avoid Doing the Wrong Things Righter."
I like it. I gotta check that out.
I'm gonna write that one down.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it was actually just published this week, but it was. And the reason I want to key in on that is because my experience is oil and gas companies get really caught up in, like latest trends. So you hear like data warehouse and big data analytics, and oh yeah, we need to go do that. And so they think, okay, well, we just need to automate our processes and pull that into a data warehouse, and then we'll be golden, and we don't really need to change, anything else. And so that's kind of the real sexy thing going on in the industry right now.
See, I find that hilarious because I'm a computer geek, and we develop software, we do all of that. But just yesterday in a training, I was talking to someone, and they're like, well, when do we make this digital? And, when is a paper copy fine? And I was telling her, I was like, look, you can try to digitize all of those paper documents, get it electronically entered. But if you spend 50 hours developing that system, and then it takes people 30 minutes longer to enter that data, and you never access this stuff, maybe like once a year in an audit, my gosh, just keep the paper file, keep a good working system, and roll on with it. But people go to these big, elaborate systems, and they just waste money.
Yep. Oh, it's so true. And, you got to ask yourself the question first is, do I even need to write this down? Is this piece of paper that I'm going to digitize? Why are we putting this down on paper? Is it something that we really need to do? Is it a value added activity, or is it just the way that we've been doing things and it's just sort of crept into the system, And so, and that's the thing with the mindset as well. I know how to do my job. I've done this for 20 years, or
I've never heard that.
And yeah, I don't need to write it down, or I don't need to look at documenting the process, and it's just the way we've done it, and that's the I think the opportunity that we have in the oil and gas industry is to make sure you're doing things. The right things the right way. And so that article that I mentioned, it talks about doing things right versus doing the right thing. Yeah. And the reason that this is so important is because most of the time in a process, if it's wasteful, if it hasn't been optimized, is you're looking at most of the time spent in that process is made of non-value added time. So that could be waiting on information or waiting on data, waiting on a part, whatever it is. It's that's you look at the time that it took to do that process. A lot of it's non-value added time, and so really, what you need to focus on is the effectiveness of that product of that process instead of just the efficiency. Yep. And so you think about what if that wrong thing that you're trying to optimize, that piece of paper that you mentioned that we referred to just a second ago. You're trying to optimize how you enter that into the system, and how you automate that. What if you could just eliminate that from the process entirely? True. You could potentially save an order of magnitude in time and expense by eliminating all those unnecessary steps versus automating that wrong step and making it more efficient. So
I couldn't agree more.
So to me, I think that's a big opportunity.
I ask people a lot of times just a simple blank question. It's fun sometimes to do. You just ask them why, nothing else. Just stare at them when they say that they're trying to improve this, or they're working on that, or they have this step here. You just say why and stare at them blankly till they get really uncomfortable, and then really ask them, why is this important? Why do you, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head, and I can see just countless examples from folks we've worked with before where they spend just enormous amounts of time, and they might have a slick system, but it doesn't add a value that it took to develop it.
Exactly. Yeah. So like what you're talking about, the 5 whys and getting to the root cause and really understanding why are you doing that thing, and is it something we need to do? And okay, if it is, that's good. Then we know that, and then how do we make it better? And so yeah, I think that's the big thing. And then the interesting bit around the next steps, like you identify what you're doing. It's like we got to measure it, and so to me that's the thing that we are really good as engineers and geoscientists in the oil and gas industry. It's a very technical industry, and we're really focused on like a lot of the technical details around drilling wells and building big projects and facilities, and analyzing seismic data and all of the cool technology that goes into that. But then when you think about it, if we were to step back, we have the skills and the toolbox already in the industry through the scientific method. And when we talk about like quality and the way we do stuff and process improvement and stuff like that, it really just boils down to the scientific method and getting real, scientific and analytical about how we document processes. How do we measure them? How do we know if they're working? How do we improve and that kind of thing? So.
Yeah.
Well, it made me cringe a little early on when you said, everybody was making money hand over fist and there's no reason to evaluate the processes. And, it just makes me think about an individual that maybe works in a seasonal business. Just because you're making all this money in the summer, if you're an AC repair guy, you don't spend it all. You tuck some away for the winter when you're not making any money. So, it just makes me cringe because they have an opportunity or had an opportunity to do the right things.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy, Darcy. I think that's like, where we're at today. We're in the winter, the AC guy ain't working. And, and this is something we should have seen coming, I think, and especially in 2015, where we had that downturn. We had the opportunity. We knew that we had to get more efficient, and some companies did. And there's been a lot of improvements, I would say, since in the past 10 years, especially. But I don't think we're where we need to be as an industry, because I think we're up into some really strong headwinds going forward. We hear about all these articles about resistance to fossil fuels, companies that had previously wanted to invest in oil and gas, and they're shying away from it now just because it's not socially acceptable.
Right, and that's a good way to put it.
So yeah, I mean, it's a really tough environment that we're faced with, and I think that the fact of the matter, though, is that we do need fossil fuels. We do need oil and gas to sustain our modern way of life that we've become accustomed to. And that's not going away anytime soon. But in order for these companies to become efficient and to last, because I think where you're seeing a lot of the majors were doing this, they saw the writing in 2012 or so, once the price of oil did come down off of that $100 plus peak. They said, yeah, we got to prepare for that winter, like you said. We got to start putting things together, and because they're they have these big initiatives and these large companies, that's something that they've always adopted and done. They said, yeah, let's go and look at how we can adopt a continuous improvement and data quality and all these things. And it's really, at the initial part, it was really just the majors. It was Shell, where I worked. I was part of the enterprise architecture program there, and it was a big push within the unconventionals business to try to streamline the way we did things. And then I know that BP was looking at it, and I think Chevron and several others. So a lot of the majors were really seeing the need that they needed, because they're so big. They've got to look at how do they become a little more efficient to compete. A lot of it was to compete with the perception that these independents were small and nimble, and with this unconventionals business, you really needed to be nimble in order to be successful. And so they needed to change. The majors needed to change in order to compete with them.
Well,
so they started that. But
What about some of these smaller folks that are the folks that are actually doing a lot of the work, you know, on these different sites, the ones that are, you know, reconditioning the equipment. You know, every time the industry as a whole suffers, these folks suffer as well, and they've got less padding to weather the storm. Do you have any advice for those folks on what ways they could do better on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same. It's the same stuff. It's, you know, asking yourself, you know, what are the real value added activities that we do? You know, like talking to the customer too. The kind of the whole, you know, look at whatever method you like, whatever flavor of continuous improvement you adopt. At the end of the day, you start it, you know, with the end in mind, so to speak. So thinking about like the Cubby analogy.
Well, and that seems to be a common phrase that comes up on our podcast. Start with the end in mind.
Yep.
Amen.
Yep. And in this case, it's like the voice of the customer, right? So many have heard of that term, but it's asking your customer, hey, what do you really need from us? You know, what are the things that we do well, and then what are the things that we can improve on? Like where are we falling short in meeting your expectations or meeting your needs? Because you may learn, you know, some surprising things about, you know, you're thinking like your metrics are looking good, and you're, you know, oh yeah, our customers are fine. You know, the sales guy took the engineer out to lunch, and they were real happy, at least they thought. But then really at the end of the day, the engineer went back and was grumbling out those guys, you know, they still, you know, at the end of the day it worked, but we had to go back and fix this and that. And, you know, the stuff there maybe not, that's not so obvious. So I think it's, you know, what are the things that they really need? What are the wastes and defects that they're finding? Because at the end of the day, those defects cost you money because you have to go back and fix them. And so to me, from like I think this is even probably more important from a service company standpoint, just because they are like you mentioned, they're really suffering right now, just because oil and gas companies, if they have existing wells, they can keep producing them. They're probably holding off on drilling any new wells or completing those wells. So if your main business is drilling wells, you know, you're not doing anything right now. Right. So yeah, I think that's the big thing.
You mentioned, you know, kind of trying to solve the right problems and talk about data collection. And this is something else, again, just yesterday in the training that came up, is we were talking about some of their customer complaints and defects and reworks that they've had. And so it seems that, and this happens a lot of places, we approach these things very emotionally, which, go figure, people approach things emotionally. But you may have this one customer complaint with a very, very loud voice, either internally or externally, but it gets a lot of attention. But then you may have had 10 reworks in between that didn't really upset the business a lot, but cost, you know, an extra 10, 15% on the time on the job. And those get ignored because they're no more part of business. But this one issue that only occurs once every 3 or 4 years, maybe, gets all of our attention.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I think it boils down to, no matter where you're at in the value chain, I'll call it, in the oil and gas industry, whether you're on the service side or in the operator side, it's really, you know, the need to sit down and understand your processes, you know, where are you at today? So sitting down and documenting, you know, whether it's on a process map, a value stream map, you know, whatever type of flow chart you want to put it on. It's just really understanding, you know, what is the process? What are the steps? And then where are you seeing those defects? And then just putting that all on paper, and then really having a critical eye. And the people that are doing the work and, you know, dealing with those defects are the ones that really need to be involved with this. It can't be a consultant coming in, working with a couple of managers to come up with the magical solution, and then everybody's got to go implement it. It's got to be the people doing the work that co-create that future state. So looking at, again, where, you know, what's working well, what's not, what should things look like in the future, and then how can we, you know, what does that mean, you know, from a opportunity standpoint? You know, how much cycle time are we taking out of the system by doing that? How many defects can we take out of the system? And then measuring it. So like I said, you know, you got to use the scientific method, look at your measures that you have in place in the process, have your targets for how you want to improve those, and then make it visual, so that people see how they're doing. And so to me, that's the, no matter what, whether it's oil and gas or another industry, those are the kind of key concepts, I think, that are helpful.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I think you just hit the nail on the head for what a lot of folks are dealing with.
And I think that's
it's big.
I think that's a good wrap up.
I do too. I don't think we could end it better than that.
Well, yeah, I will say a couple parting thoughts. Just a thing, if people want to find out more, a really good case study for this in the oil and gas industry is Era Energy, and that's AERA, and that's the joint venture between ExxonMobil and Shell.
Okay,
and they were faced with this situation, downturn in crude heavy oil prices. So they're like a heavy oil in California, and they had to do, to improve, to survive, basically. And so they implemented all these types of concepts we're talking about. The Toyota production system, they really created a version of that called the Era Way, looked at implementing lean, enterprise architecture planning for managing their data. And that's a really good case study because they've done it before. So this is not something new in the industry. It hasn't been done widely. But if you want to look at the low-cost operator in California, where you talk about a hard place to do business from a regulatory standpoint and cost and all that kind of stuff, it's California. So they're able to be successful there. So, we should be able to make it work in West Texas, kind of thing.
No kidding.
So yeah, that's that'd probably be my biggest
I like it
thing for folks to look at. And if you want to find out more, I'll link to. There's a couple of good SPE articles I've come across that talk about Era.
Perfect.
And I put together a free resource guide for your listeners, and that you can go and download that. If you can just go to mineralrightspodcast.com/QMcast, and then I got 5 helpful articles and case studies that people can look at to find out more. So,
man, that's awesome. We'll make sure that's all linked in the show notes here as well. Man, I really appreciate it. This has been a fun episode. We usually don't go over the 20-minute mark, but I can't say I'm complaining here because this is just seriously, this is good common sense information that people need, and it's not just us saying it.
I appreciate it. No, thanks again for having me. It's been fun. I appreciate it.
It's awesome. Thank you
Matt.
So much.
Hey guys, this is Darcy with Quality Matters. We really appreciate you listening, and if you enjoy it, we invite you to subscribe. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Subscribe, comment, leave us a review. We're happy to hear from you.